Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us at this obviously extremely busy time for you. I'd like to get started with your reaction to the measures that Theresa May announced. Did you see them as too much given the situation? Were they proportionate? What did you think when you heard the list that she's announced of measures to be taken?
First of all, I want to say that everything what was announced by the British government and personally by Prime Minister Theresa May is unacceptable, unjustified. And this really hurts the Russian-British relations. Of course, the measures are very strong because we're talking about the expulsion of the 23 Russian diplomats. This is 40% of the diplomatic staff of the embassy. And of course, it will definitely make the activity of the embassy quite difficult. But this is the new reality. So all these people have to leave by the 21st of March. They got only 1 week. But this is life, and the embassy will function as usual, but of course in a little bit reduced staff.
What did you make of comments? We heard UK Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson speaking, and he used quite unusual, I would say, language for diplomacy, where he talked about Russia needing to go away and, as he put it, shut up. Do you think this is conducive to the situation, or is this kind of how things will be from now on?
No, well, it's difficult to say, but I have some reservations about the political culture and the way how discussion is going on. And of course, the way how the Minister of Defense is putting his views, well, quite surprising for us. But this is the new reality, new political culture in the United Kingdom. But we hear this kind of statements, all the time in the Parliament from the British officials. For the Russian ear, it's and for the ear of any diplomat in the world, it's a little bit shocking. But when you live here in London, for a while, you can get used to this.
When you first learned of this story, because this has only gone on for just over a week now, and it seems to have snowballed so much, and events unraveled so quickly. When you first heard of, this story with a double agent and his daughter, did you expect this come to this kind of breaking point, that situation? When it was said that there's a connection to Russia, did you foresee that it would come to this kind of crescendo?
Once we got the information from the media about that accident with the poisoning of 2 Russian citizens, we immediately requested the Foreign Office to give us the details, what happened, where the investigation stands, what are the reports of the police. But almost, less than 12 hours, we heard the statement of Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who said who blamed Russia for everything what's happened in Salisbury. And for us, that's really, surprised me, because, the investigation has just started, and the member of the government is blaming the other states. It's quite a serious, let's say, blame, without any evidence. And I was really surprised. Then I had a meeting with the Boris Johnson. I was summoned to the Foreign Office, and so I got my country got the ultimatum. And this is first. And the second, of course, we were blamed that everything what happened there, this is the responsibility of Russia. So the ultimatum was very simple, 24 hours, and we have to answer basically to 2 questions. The first question is we have to confirm or deny that let's say, substance, and as Boris Johnson put it, this is under the British classification, this is A234. So basically this is based on their calculations, this is the name of that substance. Because we don't have any, let's say, access to this substance. That's why we have to trust the classification of the British. So Boris Johnson said we have to either confirm or deny that somehow we mismanaged this kind of substance, the stockpiles. And the second one, That was the question, whether if the first answer will be the negative. The second question is we have to acknowledge that this is the Russian aggression. This is the Russia who did it. Next day, we gave an official. We sent the official note, and there were 2 points there. The first one, of course, we're not ready to discuss all these things in a way of the ultimatum. And of course, Russia is not the country which is ready to talk this way. This is first. Second, we pointed out to our British counterparts that if they have any questions or, let's say, any information, they have to deal in accordance with the international law. Russia and UK are the members of the Organization for Prohibition of the Chemical Weapons, and there are, under Article 9, paragraph 2, there are procedures. In case you have any suspicions, you have to apply to this organization officially and ask for the consultations with the specific countries with whom you have this kind of suspicions, and then you have to get the answer within the 10 days or maybe earlier. And if you are not satisfied with the answer, then you have special procedures where the organization itself will be switched to this process. So instead of that, the British side decided just to talk to us, in a way of the ultimatums. So this is the way how they are behaving.
But just to clarify for those who don't know, both Britain and Russia are part of that organization.
Yeah, that's right.
So this would be normal protocol under these circumstances,
yes,
that there's an official request filed and 10 days are given.
That's right. So this is the official procedure, and we all, like all the members of that organization, are subscribed on that. But since we are blamed that this, under the British classification, agent A234 is the Russian origin, we asked the British side officially by note to share the samples of that in order to make our own conclusions. And we were denied. So that gave us additional suspicions about the policy.
Was there a reason given as to why?
No, they said just no. We're not going to give you anything.
And Boris Johnson has said that they are going to send a sample to the OPCW, but not to Russia.
That was later. That was later. So basically, of course, we're welcome to, let's say, to send this to the organization. But still, I just spoke to our ambassador to this organization, and he said that so far the organization didn't get any formal request from the British side. It means that I don't know how they're going to act, but for the time being, no official procedure was launched. And this is another, let's say, very suspicious behavior of the British side. So all the investigation about the Skripal is classified. We don't have any information. We don't have any access. Nobody saw even the pictures of that people in the hospital, whether they're alive or maybe they are just in a good health. So nobody talked to the doctors. There is absolutely no transparency in this case, and this worries us. But by the way, under the international law and the Vienna Convention, we have to get the access to these people because they are Russian citizens. And we're also being denied. So basically, Britain doesn't respect the international law, and the way how they're behaving, it's just puts a lot of questions.
What did you make of some of the media coverage of this story? Because obviously anti-Russia moods, if you can put it that way, have been prevalent for quite some time. So when this story happened, were you surprised to see the way it unraveled, given the investigation is still going on and the police have not made any official statements in terms of pointing fingers quite yet?
The launch was made after the speech of Boris Johnson. That was the next day. So immediately under the command, of the Foreign Secretary, we got all these media reports without any evidence. If you read the British newspapers, you will see that there are no evidence. This is first. At the beginning of this campaign, we heard two things quite interesting. The first one, there were calls that the license of the RT should be revoked. And the second one, that there were promises in the parliament to launch the cyber attack against Russia. So basically there was a strong reaction from the Russian side about the presence of the RT in the UK. But what is interesting, we officially requested the explanations about the plans of Britain to launch this cyber attack. It's a real cyber attack against the country. It's the act of war. First of all, we didn't get the official answer to this note. And somehow, 2 days ago, let's say that topic disappeared from the British newspapers and from any statements from in the parliament. So basically, I think that the British side decided that was too much. So two things: RT and the cyber attack disappeared from the British media. So this is the answer to your question.
What do you make of some of the terminology being used, including Theresa May, Boris Johnson? She's used the words highly likely, that got a lot of traction. He today said, when asked how certain he is that Russia's behind this on a scale from 1 to 10, he said 9.98. Yet he's also said there's overwhelming evidence that points at Russia. Do you think, given the gravity of the accusations and the consequences that are clearly already following in this story, there should just be more certainty provided? I'll
tell you, this is quite a trick, because when you don't have evidence, when you don't have any proofs, you have to use the word likely, probably, maybe. Because the British side cannot provide any information, they cannot provide any access to the investigation. That's why, in order to say something for sure, you have to present the evidence, and they cannot do this.
But then why would they go so far with these kinds of measures that are being put in place?
I think this is if you look back to the policy of the UK, you will find that Britain, in new circumstances, is trying to find its new place in let's say, even in the Western society, because they are leaving EU, and everything what is left, I'm not talking about the United Nations, but the key organization, this is NATO. And Britain is trying to find the place, and this place they found on so-called anti-Russian campaign and the way how they want to deter Russia. That's why we have seen a year ago the new concept of national security, where Russia was named as the major enemy to Britain. Then there was a banquet speech where we basically got the confirmation that we're the enemy. And there is one more reason for, let's say, diverting the attention of the British public is the Brexit. Because the situation with the negotiations is not so easy in this country. And Britain will definitely has to find the solutions with the European Union, and for the time being, I don't see any results from the negotiations. And they have, in order to divert the attention from the Brexit, they have to, let's say, to present something to the public that could move a little bit to the other side. And that's a great possibility to launch this anti-Russian campaign, anti-Russian attack. And so this is the scenario which was written in London, but from my point of view, this is a very short-sighted scenario, because in the long run, Britain have to explain what is behind all these things in Salisbury. I think they have to explain what they're doing in this secret chemical laboratory, which is 8 miles from the Salisbury. Where they investigated that substance based on their, let's say, information on their samples, based on the certain standards they have. And this, I think this will be the question that they have to clarify in the Organization for Proliferation of the Chemical Weapons. Because everything what is being said today looks for us very suspicious.
Just to go back for a little bit to the relationship between Russia and the UK now. Where does it go from here? Because we've seen in recent months, especially with some of the accusations flying around, people have been asking, is this kind of new Cold War? Today, Williamson was asked about this, and he said, he didn't use the term Cold War, but he said extremely, extremely chilly. Where does the relationship go from here? And where would Russia like it to go from here? This week and then moving forward, and what would it take to for this kind of gridlock to move somewhere?
Well, if you look at the concept of the Russian foreign policy and everything what we did all these years, the major task for us is to create favorable conditions for the development of my country. So this is the way how we are putting all the relations with all the other countries. By the way, if you look at the world, you will find that maybe something like with the 120 countries, we don't have a visa regime, so we want to have the friendly relations. So that was the goal, of course, of our policy with the UK, and that was the job of any ambassador, including me. And all these years, despite the difficulties that we have with Britain, we tried to find the opportunities for the political dialogue, and we created the right formats, you know, like the Minister and the Minister of Defense format. You know, there was active participation in the political life during the Olympic Games here. So we tried to promote the economic relations, and you know, business is our ally here, because you know they simply don't understand what's happening, you know, with the government, but they have limited influence on them. So culture, science, you know, everybody's interested, and probably the political, let's say, so-called deep state. So they are putting the policy that we are witnessing. So basically, the approach will be very simple. First of all, we want to clarify all the questions that are behind this kind of a provocation. This is exactly what we see. This is first. And then we'll see what are the other possibilities, because we have to influence Britain. Britain is the permanent member of the Security Council, and we're interested to hear our views, and we want to influence on the British policy. And in order to have this influence, you have to have the mechanisms. That's why our policy will be, let's say, quite balanced. We have strategic patience, but we will never allow to talk to us in such a language as you just heard from the Minister of Defense. This is not our language. So we are right. We know what we're doing, as Theresa May said. And the time will come when the people of Britain will understand that they have maybe to have another government or another people who will have a better policy towards Russia in our bilateral relations. We are always open for any constructive cooperation because, as I said, our task is to create as favorable conditions for my country, to development of this country, because we're busy with our own economy. So we're not going to put anybody as the enemy or something. It's not our policy, but we have strategic patience. Britain is facing quite a serious steps on our side, on two dimensions, on two directions. The first one, of course, will demand to answer all our notes and official requests. So we're talking about get the samples of that A234 under the British classification. This is the poison, as they put it. We have to get the access to this family of Skripal. By the way, we asked the access and so consular access to another gentleman who died here. He's a Russian citizen, Mr. Glushkov, and the circumstances are very suspicious. So we will get all the answers from the British side in the Organization for the Proliferation of the Chemical Weapons. We'll get access to all investigations that they're doing. And of course, I'm quite sure that we'll get all the results. It's not just a one-day story, it's not a media story, but at the end of the day, we'll clarify the whole situation with the policy of Britain. So that's why we are confident, that's why we know that we are right, and we believe this is the right direction of work with the British, but it should be done in a legal way, not just through the media. And of course, I think that I hope that we'll put the British to the table of not the negotiations, or at least the conversation, because for the time being, they're escaping of doing this.